Good morning and welcome to the Cosmic Influence. My name is Walter Cruttenden and I'm here with Charlotte Morose.
Hello.
And we're the folks at the Binary Research Institute that investigate the cause and consequences of solar system motion. And as part of this general investigation process, we have podcasts and books and conferences. And we have the conference on Procession Ancient Knowledge coming up this October 22nd in Palm Springs. And we also, interview various people that have knowledge related to this topic. This topic includes, what might cause the rise and fall of civilization. And if it's indeed true, then what were the higher ages like? And what's the evidence of that? And that takes us to megalithic structures, ancient mythology, which is Charlotte's expertise, as well as, ancient science and math. And that's Robert's expertise, who is our guest today. And can you tell us a little more about him?
Yeah, we're really excited to have Robert Edward Grant here speaking with us. Robert is a super curious and pretty ingenious researcher of many esoteric kind of elements of geometry, mathematics, laws of physics and natural sciences, and especially looks at ancient wisdoms that are coming through structures, coming through texts, coming through mythologies that we're now receiving today, and that can tell us something about what was known in terms of technology, in terms of wisdom in ancient times, possibly even pointing to civilizations that we don't yet have a lot of information about that may have existed a long, long time ago. So we're really excited to dig into a lot of these mathematical and also esoteric concepts that Robert is often playing with.
Perfect. Welcome, Robert. Great to have you on the show again. Good to see you.
Good to be here. Good to see you, Walter.
Yes.
Hi, Charlotte.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome.
So what have you been up to lately?
Oh, well, I just got back from Egypt.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just got
Where
back
did you-
and had a lot of new discoveries there. It was an amazing trip, and I ended up going down the Nile, and came all the way up. Then I started at Aswan, and then came all the way up, and then ended up in Giza, and a new place called Abu Rawash, which is going to become very, very important, I feel, in the course of the next few months and years.
Well, I don't think I'm familiar with that.
Most people are
what is
not.
that?
Most people are not. Well, basically, it is 8 kilometers exactly. So it's 8,000 meters exactly from the peak of the pyramid to the peak of the pyramid that was in Abu Rawash, and it's north of the Great Pyramid complex, right, in Giza.
North.
And so it
Okay.
sits on a plateau that's 300 feet higher than the Giza plateau. So the pyramids that were there, one of them had a 60-degree angle. There are 2 pyramids. Their bases are still intact, but the pyramids somehow exploded. And you can find their remnants within hundreds of meters in the radius of those pyramids. So very high on its own plateau. It looks down on Giza. And there were 2 pyramids there. One was 300 feet high, but it would have looked like 600 feet high because it's so high on this plateau peak. And then the other pyramid is would have been 100 feet high. And the larger of the 2 pyramids, and it's adjacent to each other, the larger of the 2 pyramids is called the Jed Efre Pyramid. The Jed Efre Pyramid at Abu Rawash. And it matched the same mathematics of the Giza Plateau, so we believe that they are linked to Giza.
And so is it recognized to be a site of ancient pyramids?
It is.
And yeah.
It's recognized. Some refer to it as the Great Pit because the pyramid literally looks as though it exploded. Another place we've seen something similar like this is the Bent Pyramid in Dashur, where the corners of the pyramid clearly exploded off somehow. And you see the casing stone on the rest of the pyramid at the Bent Pyramid in Dashur, but even hundreds of meters away, you'll find 20-ton, 30-ton blocks that have been blown from that location at the corners. So it's very similar to that, except in this case, the Djed Efre pyramid and its satellite, which I call the Philosopher's Stone because we haven't named it otherwise, pyramid, literally have only, about 15 concourses left of the larger of the two pyramids. And you can see the concourses. They look just like large block construction of the Great Pyramid, except that the whole thing has been exploded out. And so the innards of the pyramid and its underground network are still intact. They're all there. And if I can find the video here, I could share some of it with you on this if you're interested for me to do so. But it looks down on Giza. And the mathematics of it is very consistent with the Great Pyramid. So the Great Pyramid and the mathematics of it are as follows. So the Great Pyramid is 2 over pi. So the height over its base is the ratio. The Khafre pyramid, the second pyramid on the Giza Plateau, is 4 over 3. And that creates a 53.13 degree angle of slope, which is exactly what everybody understands and knows of that pyramid. And the Menkaure pyramid is 5 over 4, which gives you a 51.34 degree angle. So think of these as, you cut the face or cross section of the pyramid in half and you've got a right triangle. And the height of Menkaure would be 5 units versus the base of 4 units. So it's always been a mystery why they chose 51.34 degrees for Menkaure pyramid. If you follow the dynastic story, it's been a mystery why they chose 53.13 degrees for the Khafre pyramid or the middle pyramid on the Giza Plateau. And then, of course, the 51.8539 degrees of the Great Pyramid has also been a mystery, but it's the tetractys. It's 5 over 4, 4 over 3, and then 2 over 1. And why 1? Because the pi is the circumference of a circle that has a diameter of 1. So it's another way of looking at 2 over 1. So you got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But I noticed that there was something missing.
Slope isn't really the issue. It's the ratios that they were trying to create that resulted in the slopes, is what you're saying.
Exactly. So the ratios they were trying to create are musical ratios. So the 5 over 4 of Menkaure, if you're a musician, you might recognize that as a major third in music. So the way that would sound to us is perhaps the most beautiful sound in music. It goes da, da. So then you would want to finish it with a fifth, which would be da, 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 da. Then you have the octave, right? So the major third is described and used in movies, in background music, to bring you a feeling of romantic love. So it's literally romantic love feeling. So if you look at the pyramid and it's got a 5 over 4 proportion, right? So the height to the base, 1/2 the base, then that means the full base is 8. So the inverse of the major third would be the minor 6th. So the third adds to 6th to create a 9th, right? That's how all of the musical intervals always are. So the inverse would be the opposite. So if the feeling in music and movies and film is the major third equals romantic love, then the music they play when there's a heartbreaking scene is 8 over 5, which is the minor 6th. So it has a flipped polarity. So when we look at the architecture of the Menkaure pyramid, the smallest on the Giza Plateau, what we're really looking at is we're taking in this feeling of geometry, which is really just the music that we experience with our eyes. In the form of architecture, we are looking at it from one perspective as romantic love, and the other, the base over the height. So the height over 1/2 the base is romantic love, but the base over the height is heartbreak.
As above, so below.
Exactly. So it explains something about the Duat, which is the Egyptian story of Osiris going in to live in the Duat, the plane of duality, that in the experience of romantic love is the seed of heartbreak. And this is true not only for the Menkaure pyramid, it's true for the other 2 pyramids. In the case of the Khafre pyramid, it's also a perfect fourth. So if C was your starting note position, then F would be your fourth position, because C, D, E, F, that's 4 notes. That's why it's a fourth, right?
Mhm.
And then its inverse would be the perfect fifth,
Mhm.
right? Which is that same da, 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 that da is a fifth of the starting note C. So basically, these are the most fundamental understandings of music theory, and they're built right into the pyramids.
Mhm.
And the Great Pyramid is the diminished fifth and augmented fourth, which is actually the proportions that are played in music in movies like Star Wars when Darth Vader enters the room.
Mhm.
It's the don, 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 don. It
Yeah.
represents, I believe, the unfinished mankind.
Mm.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, and so you inspire all these other kind of dualities that come from that kind of duat, the kind of together and separate, masculine and feminine, night and day, all these kind of dualities that then I'm thinking about pyramid complexes having one, and then often, I'm not sure if you find this as well, but often come in complexes of three. So I'm
Mhm.
just curious about the number three. I'm thinking about the kind of uh the alchemical piece of two opposites come together and something transcendent, not to, to use some Jungian language there, but a transcendent sort of third.
It's
Does that kind of come up musically as well in any way?
absolutely, it's absolutely beautiful.
Mhm.
So what we discovered, and Alan Green worked on this with me as well, is that the story of the Giza Plateau is that very likely all 3 pyramids on the Giza Plateau were created at the same time.
Mhm.
It would have been very difficult to convince generations after you that they had to build a pyramid exactly to this proportion
Uh-huh.
if it's spanning 30, 40, 50 years. I can't even get, my wife to agree, or, we can't get our spouses to agree with like a renovation on what things are going to be, right?
Yeah, it's a
So
hard
to have
sell.
it come out so perfectly sort of presupposes that this was a coordinated plan, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And
Yeah.
what's missing on that are 2 proportions. So I
Mhm.
said 5/4 is Menkaure, the smallest pyramid. It's in granite encased. 4/3 is the Khafre pyramid. And then 2/1 is the Great Pyramid. So what about 3/2?
Mm.
So 3/2 is missing,
Mhm.
right? And what about 6/5? Is there a place for a 6/5 pyramid? And it turns out the pyramid on the $1 note is a 6/5 pyramid, a height of 6, and its full base is 5. So if you look at the back of a $1 note, right, you'll see that there's a pyramid on there that has the Eye of Providence on it, right? You
Mhm.
probably all recognize this.
Yeah.
And this is what it looks like, right? So
Yeah.
Got
that
it.
pyramid right there is a very special pyramid because it's found all over esoterica.
Mhm.
And the Freemasons that created, things like the Great Seal of the United
Mhm.
States of America embedded all of this stuff, just like they did into the works of Shakespeare, right? That was just a pen name for Sir Francis Bacon and others in that time period, which would have been Edward de Vere and Kit Marlowe and John Dee. They
Mhm.
encrypted all of this into all these things that have prominent sort of places in our psyches, right? And
Mhm.
so what I found was that the Menkaure pyramid creates the perfect square. So if you have a 5/4 ratio, if you take half of the pyramid base and make a square of that, that square becomes quote unquote perfect. Well, what makes a square perfect? What makes a square perfect is a square whose perimeter is equal to its area.
Mhm.
So how many squares can do that? Well, there's only one that can do that. And it has to have a side length of 4, because 4 squared equals the area, which is 16, and 4 times its 4 sides also equals 16.
Mhm.
So the proportions are well embedded into that pyramid. 5/4 is the proportion. And that creates the perfect 51.34 degree angle. So then the Menkaure pyramid gives us the perfect square. So the Khafre pyramid actually gives us the perfect circle. If we take a circle from its base up to its apex and make a circle around that, that circle will also be a circumference of 4 pi and an area of 4 pi. So this is starting to become interesting, right? So the perfect square, the perfect circle. Well, the Great Pyramid does something altogether different. It squares the circle. So the squaring of the circle is where the area, or rather in this case, the perimeter is equal of the square is equal to the circle's circumference. And only the Great Pyramid does that. If you take 1/2 of the base of the Great Pyramid proportionally, and then take and make a square of that, and then make a circle from its base to its apex, the circle will have the exact same value as the square's perimeter. So we have squaring of the circle, which is about balancing masculine, feminine energy. We have the perfect circle in Khafre pyramid, and we have the Menkaure pyramid, which is the perfect square. Now, the original names of the pyramids were, the Great Pyramid was Mer, and the Khafre pyramid was Ka,
and the last one
and the
was
Menkaure pyramid is Ba,
Merkaba.
Merkaba. Okay, so but what about the other two positions that are missing, 6/5, and the other position of 3/2? Well, the two pyramids that are 8 kilometers north of Giza, that are on the Abu Rawash plateau, that have, been largely destroyed, we don't know how, would have a angle slope of 60 degrees, which is implying a ratio of the square root of 3/2. So 3/2.
Oh, wow.
And the other pyramid, and this had been measured by Italian explorers in 1959. They did the work along with Petrie, and they said, look, this should be about a 60-degree angle. And you could see, because there's casing stone, one of the casing stones is still there, and they can see it has exactly a 60-degree angle for its slope. So that's a very steep pyramid for a pyramid that has 104.719 meter base, which is exactly pi over 3 times 100, right? So wait a minute. This pyramid would have had a 60-degree slope and then would have stood 300 feet high, and its base was already 300 feet higher than the Giza Plateau's base. So this would have been the tallest pyramid by far, over 120 feet taller than the Great Pyramid. And all of it encased in granite like Menkaure, except rose granite. And then the satellite right next to it and right in front of it is shaped like a pineal gland. And that is the one on the Great Pyramid. And that's why the Eye of Providence, not the Great Pyramid, the one on the dollar bill. That's why the Eye of Providence is on it, is representing the third eye. And this pyramid would have stood 103 feet high based on its base width and the measurement of its angle of 67.4 degrees. So it turns out that that's a 6/5 pyramid. So now we have these 5 pyramids on the Giza Plateau and the extension of the Giza Plateau. The 3 pyramids on the Giza Plateau actually represents the throat chakra. And the 2 pyramids at Abu Rawash are the pineal gland, I believe, and pituitary glands.
And why do you think they represent the throat chakra?
Well, the original name of the Great Pyramid, and it relates to Osiris. Osiris sits on the precession of equinox, right in between Gemini and Taurus. So if you look at the Orion constellation, which is known as the Osiris constellation to the ancient Egyptians, the Orion constellation arguably could have been maybe a zodiac sign. And its exact opposite would be in between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And the opposite, 180-degree differential from it, is another sign that many believe is the 13th zodiacal sign, which is called Ophiuchus. And it's a man holding a snake, which represents the taming of the Kundalini. It's an older man who has wisdom, whereas Orion is depicted often as a boastful young man.
The hunter.
The hunter.
Mhm.
right? So what I found on this trip was that the Nile is actually the backbone representing Osiris. It goes through each of the temples, starting with Abu Simbel, which would be comparative to the root chakra.
Mhm.
And then each of the temples is another chakra along this pathway of the Nile River as it flows downstream towards the Nile Delta. The Nile Delta becomes the lotus flower at the top as it branches out that comes out of the head. The most northern temple is actually Abu Rawash, and I believe it represents the crown chakra. Now, the Great Pyramid is also known by many anciently as the House of Osiris.
Mhm.
And it was, if you look at astrological sort of analyses that go into each of the chakras, the throat chakra is controlled by Taurus. And so that would mean that the Kamumbo temple, which would be where the sacral chakra is controlled by Ophiuchus.
Mhm. Which is the Kundalini, the reptile, sort of the Kamumbu, the crocodile.
That's
But
right.
that's sort of being the kind of Kundalini or the snake, the
It's the dragon.
Ophidian.
The
Yeah, the
crocodile
dragon. Yeah,
represents the dragon. So
right.
this is the dragon energy. And
The
finally,
second chakra.
mankind has to get control
Right.
of its dragon energy in that place.
Right. And we can't leave it behind. We can't skip over it. Got to go through it.
We
kind of.
got to go through it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Exactly. And so once you, and the sex chakra is connected to the throat chakra.
Mhm.
Those two are connected. So there's another, aspect of the sex chakras. We have, we believe 7 chakras in our body, but actually it multiplies and actually becomes 24, right? It's like 24 hours in a day. We have 7 days in a week. We actually have 24 chakras, and it will actually increase from there even. And they're all musical notes in a 24 note scale. So it turns out you've probably heard of 432 hertz and the
Mhm.
significance of 432 hertz. Well, that is the tetractys, right? 4, 3, 2, 1, same thing.
Mhm.
So if you looked at the Giza Plateau and drew a rectangle exactly from an aerial view of the Giza Plateau, and you drew a rectangle from the northeast corner of the Great Pyramid to the southwest corner of Menkaure Pyramid, the proportion would be 432
Mhm.
base width versus 528.
Uh-huh.
The other frequency that often people talk about. And when I put that in precise tempered tuning, I found that they're actually part of the same scale in a 24 note quarter tone scale.
Oh,
And the
wow.
number of years in the precession of equinox, I believe to be 24,000 years. The reason it's not only Shirk Teshwa who says that, but I believe that there's good basis for that, because if you look at a right triangle, the right triangle that represents this is exactly the same as the half one on the dollar bill.
Mm.
This is also the exact same one that matches the Vitruvian Man. If you take the square and circle and you connect those 3 points, the 2 base points of the square connected to the top of the circle, gives you this exact same proportion of a 5, 12, 13 triangle, which is the perfect triangle. The perfect triangle is a triangle that, like the perfect square, the perfect circle, shares the same value for its area and its perimeter. So that's what led me. So I thought, wait, if there's a perfect square and there's a perfect circle, and Menkaure is the perfect square and the perfect circle is Khafre, and the squaring of the circle is the Great Pyramid, then there must be 2 missing pyramids.
Mm.
And I found a map from 1457 by an Italian explorer and map maker, cartographer by the name of Fra Mauro.
Mm.
And Fra Mauro made a map that sits today in, a copy of it, a facsimile of it sits in the Galileo Museum in Florence, Italy. So you can see it. And if you look at
So these
the
2
known world,
pyramids are on that map.
yes,
They existed at that
There were-
time, or they
there
were
were
less
5
destroyed at that time.
I don't know if it's referencing exactly those pyramids, but for Egypt, it has 5 pyramids at the
Oh,
Giza
wow.
area.
Yeah.
So all of this implies an intelligence that's just beyond comprehension right now. A degree of planning just to do the 3 pyramids at once would be immense. And then the degree of planning to have basically all the temples along the Nile represent the chakras is again another level, which I suppose is possible, as long as, but it's incomprehensible nowadays.
It really is, and that's what I'm going to show you here, if you allow me to.
Oh, please, yeah, share your
yeah.
screen. I'm glad you did.
So this is a program called GeoGebra.
Wow.
And I use it for geometry analysis. And so even though the proportions are 2/1 for the Great Pyramid, it was actually the largest of the 5 pyramids. 481, and it sits on a lower location, right? But the Great Pyramid proportion is right here. So if you see this inner triangle right here, right?
Okay.
Let me, so this inner triangle, that's this sort of brownish color triangle, right? That's the proportion of the Great Pyramid, and its slope is 51.8539 degrees. Okay, and that's perfect. That's matching Petrie's measurements and everything. Now, the circle, right, which would be this one I just highlighted, and I'll make it wider. So you'll see something unique about this.
From the peak to the base.
Yep. This circle, if I look to see what its just pull this up here for a second. If I look to see what its length is, right, on that circle, so it has 2 pi as the length of its circle, right? That's the circumference of the circle. Now, the square, that is simply 1/2 the base. So if you take a circle, you can see where 1/2 the base would be. So if I take a circle like this, and then from the Great Pyramid to the Great Pyramid, then the place where that intersects would define the midpoint. So this point of intersection right here, do you see this? On these 2 black circles, they intersect over this square. So this square is perfectly 1/2 the base square. So if we looked at that square to see what its, perimeter would be, right? I'd have to make a new square, but I'll go ahead and do that. So if I take this right here, it's not going to be exact because I didn't put it exactly on that spot. So I'm going to put it exactly on that spot. There we go. I do the same thing on this side, and I make a new square there. We can measure that square. And we'll make a new square from this, and we can see exactly what I'm saying. Only the Great Pyramid does this. So now I've got a square that's the blue square, and I'm going to measure the perimeter value of that square. Right? Hang on a second. That's not the right one. It grabbed the wrong one.
A different one, yeah.
Yeah, it grabbed a different one.
Such an amazing program, though.
It is. It's a fantastic program. I get my glasses here. It's a fantastic program. So I'm going to find a way to pull this one forward. So if I,
intuitively, I can understand why people would like to design and build things with these beautiful proportions, consistent with musical tones. But
there, look at this.
Can you think of any practical reason that they would have done it?
Activation. So the exact musical tones. So I think it teaches us, first of all, a lot. But you can see here how the Great Pyramid squares the circle. So I have a circumference, and that's not supposed to be possible without measurement, right? But it did it here. Look at this. So the circle has a circumference of 6.28318.53071,796. And the square of 1/2 the base of the square. So you see how the peak of the circle is right on the apex of the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid represents the perfect balance of the square and the circle. The masculine of the square and the feminine of the circle. This is just undeniable mathematical fact. And the perimeter of this square right here, which is polygon 10, is 6.2831853071796. Identical.
Wow. Wow.
17 decimal digits of accuracy. And that was supposed to have been proven to be impossible back in 1882 to square the circle, but the Egyptians did it in architecture in living stone.
Right. So there's, I think from Walter's question, just thinking about the kind of energetics of music, or the music of energetics, that sort of question about particle acceleration potential in these sort of tonal values. Does that ring bells for you with this, or is there a different way you would talk about that?
I believe that the main purpose of the pyramid complex is a spiritual one.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that they also created energy,
Mm-hmm.
but that the main purpose, that was a secondary effect of it.
Uh-huh.
I believe that what we're dealing with on the Giza Plateau is a very, very advanced knowledge that was a centrally planned endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And these values, you could check them. That's the thing. It's like, I'm surprised nobody's really noticed this before. When you look at, this pyramid, for example, we could see if Menkaure pyramid really matches this, and we can look at its, its angle, and you can see that its angle is 51. This one is the Khafre pyramid, is 51.1301 degrees. That's exactly the Khafre pyramid. So if I looked up Khafre pyramid, right, Khafre pyramid slope, right? So it's 51,
Mm-hmm.
right? Degrees, 13, right? It's the exact same thing.
Wow.
And the same thing with Menkaure. The
Mm-hmm.
Menkaure pyramid is this larger one out here. And we can see it's 51.34 degrees. So let's look at...
Didn't Google say 53? Wasn't that the number we were looking at?
That was the 53 that we just looked at. Yes, that was for the Khafre pyramid. Menkaure is 51.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go to the Menkaure pyramid, it's 51 degrees, 20 minutes, 25 seconds, which comes out to 51.34 degrees exactly.
Yeah.
So if we do take 51, this would be compass to decimal. So we put in 51 minutes, because they use the sexagesimal math then.
Mm-hmm.
51 minutes, 20 degrees, 51 degrees, 20 minutes, and 25 seconds. Then you have 51.34028. And back to the GeoGebra.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Oh, why did it do that to me? Huh. I already did it, and then it took me away. So I've got to go back into this now.
That's okay. I
Yep.
believe
So
you.
it comes out to 51.34 degrees.
Right.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's exact. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like there's no refuting it. Right there.
Right.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's so profound, but I just want to know why. And yeah, I can intuitively believe and understand that it's
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual purpose, because that's kind of the highest purpose of everyone on the planet,
Mm-hmm.
to transform and become the best we can be. But man, they'd almost all have to be in a very high age, sort of all telepathically tuned in and knowing this information innately, so you don't have to communicate it through a written plan,
Mhm.
Well, and
to
Menkaure
create
pyramid
something like this.
is very unique because only Menkaure pyramid, which I believe is the most holy of the three, because it's made of granite. So it
Uh-huh.
means it's 55% quartz crystal.
Oh, wow. Mhm.
And it's the only one that's made of granite on the Giza Plateau. And it's the only one whose half base square
Mhm.
is exactly intersecting its circle from its base to its top. So it's this one right
Okay.
here.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's also unique is that if I take a circle of Caffrey and then proportionally size this as they actually are on the Giza Plateau. This is just looking at the proportionalities of it, right? Of
Mhm.
6/5, 5/4, 4/3, 3/2. And so if I took that, then I would find that the same phenomenon happens when I take the square of Khufu pyramid, the Great Pyramid, that's the half base square, and overlay on top of it the Caffrey circle. They meet exactly like this as well. It's
Mhm.
intentional.
Mhm.
When you're
Yeah.
in Egypt and you talk to Egyptologists about this or archaeologists about this, what kind of response do you get? I mean, it's
Mhm.
it's
It's interesting because um, they're not trained in mathematics
Right, right.
or in geometry for that matter. So it's like a whole new language for them.
Mhm.
But when you think about a sufficiently advanced civilization, have you ever seen the film or read the book called Foundation by Isaac Asimov?
I've been watching the show.
the series.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't read the book, but I was noticing. I heard you talk a bit about the connections between.
No, but science says
Yeah.
long said the highest language is the language of math.
Mhm. Mhm.
Well, in the show, there's a story of a civilization, and it's supposed to be kind of like long, long ago in a galaxy far, far away type thing.
Right, right.
And it's science fiction, of course, but he tells a story of a very advanced civilization that was going through a cycle of darkness.
Mhm.
And they had been, a glorious civilization for thousands and thousands of years. And then, as a mathematician, the main character by the name of Harry Sheldon predicts that they were going into a period of darkness. And in order to safeguard the knowledge of their civilization, while mankind is kind of like, trying to pick itself up through the rubble of the
Mhm.
destruction that he was predicting that would be coming, they had to take all their knowledge and encrypt it inside a geometric shape. And the shape that he used in the show and the book was the cuboctahedral structure.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
So they hid all of this information so that when mankind awakened and remembered who it was out of the rubble of, the darkness period,
Mhm.
then he would have the information and she would have the information to rebuild the civilization and have a head start on it. So
Mhm.
inside this one geometric structure was everything encrypted. Now, I believe that geometry is like a QR code for the subconscious mind.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that
Good way to
just
look
by
at it.
studying these things, it raises your consciousness and
Mhm.
the consciousness of all. It's like the 100th monkey.
Mhm.
Once, I was just telling the story to someone about these killer hornets that kill bees. Have you seen this? And
Oh, yeah, yeah.
these killer hornets like to go and eat bees. And so the bees were getting destroyed, having like major problems with these hornets that were attacking them that came over from Asia, right? These hornets are massive. And so the bees figured out how to defeat the hornets. And the way they did it was they would wait for the hornet to capture one of their bees and then tear its head off and eat it. And then all the bees learned to swarm on top of this big giant hornet. And the turns out that the bees have a higher threshold for temperature than
Mm.
the hornets do. So these bees would swarm on top, thousands of them would swarm around these giant hornets, and they would buzz their wings and raise the temperature so that they would cook the hornet and not cook themselves.
Oh, wow.
There's like a 4-degree differential. And I think that what we're dealing with here is like a threshold knowledge basis. And
Mhm.
as soon
Mhm.
as the first bees figured out how to do this to prevent from, having a hive collapse
Right.
because of these hornets, then all bees figured out how to do it. It was like on some frequency.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, almost I love how your work incorporates the kind of tonal the potential of tone, and also just how pervasive tone is in life, and also for humans and our experience of consciousness and raising our consciousness, expanding our consciousness, how
Mhm.
much tone has to do with that. And I'm thinking of parallels there of wave frequency, particles, like sort of the sense of all of these being just different ways. Does it feel like all different ways to talk about the same thing, which is something innate to kind of levels of or expansions of consciousness? And I'm just thinking about how it is that those things, that sort of message, or that B technology is transmitted, is in some ways possibly sort of through something that we talk about through physics, but also you could talk about through these esoteric kind of codes in here of how things are communicated out. Is that sort of in the realm of? I'm just
Yes, it
thinking about the
is.
kind
It
of,
is. And
yeah.
I think I have a little short video I could show you that sort of explains this.
Mhm.
And I'll pull this up real quick for you.
I'm thinking about the Dr. Sam Osmonagic. I never say his name right, but the pyramidologist who studied pyramid complexes around the world. Have you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and is kind of famously sort of involved in studying the Bosnian pyramid, though it's, I know, much
Yes. Uh-huh.
contested. But
Mm-hmm.
I've worked with him just a little bit, and just remember him talking about the kind of pyramid complexes all over the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking about that kind of, is it possible that there's a shape, if you were to zoom out, if you were to go out um, to space and looking at Earth, if you could look at all of the pyramid complexes, is there a shape? Is there sort of an encoded shape there? I know that's kind of a
Yes.
far out kind
Yes,
of
there
idea,
is.
but yeah.
It all comes back to Orion.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It literally all comes back to Orion. So you can look at it, the Chinese pyramids have the exact shape of Orion. The
Right.
Mexican pyramids on the Teotihuacan plateau
Have
comes
Right.
that
out to
three.
Orion,
Yeah.
right? And basically that's how it all works, right? So
Hmm.
that's what we're seeing here, is that you know it comes back to Orion over and over and over again.
Okay.
And so there's some symbology about this Orion shape that I think is intended to sort of remind us, as it were, who we are as a species.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally found this video for you. So let me go ahead and pull this up.
That sort of reinforces the spiritual purpose. I know one of
Mm-hmm.
the stories about Orion, of course, is like he's Perseus in the Mithraic
Mm-hmm.
myths, and he has to
There's the snake again.
right. Yes, he has to
Medusa's head.
right, and then get through Taurus to get to
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
the
that's
golden
exactly
age.
Yeah.
right. That is
And
exactly right. And so it
yeah,
relates to this picture right here. Can you see this?
it's not showing up just
It's not
yet.
showing up just yet. Okay, let me
I don't think you're sharing your screen right
okay.
now.
Yep. It should be just shortly. Here we go. Okay. So,
Oh, wow.
There's the base chakra, the root, and of
yep,
course the crown chakra, the lotus.
exactly.
Oh, look how much that looks like the Nile.
Yeah.
Right. And all the temples. And so this was work that I just did on this last trip. And I'm
Wow.
matching up the musical notes and how all the symbologies are matching as well. Dendera is the heart.
Yeah, yeah.
And and the zodiac signs are also matching. So then we've got the throat chakra, which is up here, and it's actually where this red dot is, right?
Uh-huh.
And then we've got two other pyramids that are north of there called Abu Rawash. And those are the Jed. Now,
Right,
now
right.
the simple meaning of the word Jed, they named it Jed Ephraim because they thought, oh, the guy who made this pyramid also had a sailboat crevice next to the pyramid. And so there must be some sort of like, sunboat that that was buried here at some time, but they never found. And so they just decided to call it the Djed Efre Pyramid. But actually, the reason why it was called the Djed Efre Pyramid was because it was always referred to as the Djed Pyramid.
Oh, wow.
The
Wow.
Djed is the symbology of Osiris raising the Djed.
Right.
That's the Djed pillar.
Right. And the Djed having a lot to do with the number 5, higher heart in some understandings.
Yes, that's
if
right.
I'm
So 4 and
correct.
5,
Mhm.
definitely. And
And,
it's about achieving heart-brain coherence.
right. I've heard Osiris by some Egyptologists translated as a verb, to be born anew out of death.
Yes, it represents resurrection, which
Mhm.
is really
Yeah.
like, being stuck in this reincarnation cycle. But the resurrection in this
Right.
case actually means you can break out of the reincarnation cycle.
Right. And you're making me also see resurrection as the possibility of two opposing forces coming together and making a sort of something new, something that
Yes,
is whole, the wholeness
it's
out of it. So
it's the Ida
yeah.
and the Pingala, right,
Mm,
who come and meet at the pineal and pituitary gland for the crown chakra and the lotus, and
right.
that's the Sushumna, right, going straight up the spine. So
Ah,
this
so
is the video I was going to basically show you guys.
mhm.
The pyramids on the Giza Plateau, the height to the base, 1/2 the base of Menkaure Pyramid, the smallest pyramid, is 5/4. The height of the Khafre Pyramid is 4/3, which is a perfect fourth. And the relationship of the Great Pyramid is the diminished fifth. The Great Pyramid is actually the imperfect or the unfinished man, unfinished mankind. All
Got it.
intervals. There are 13 musical intervals. Every one of them is represented perfectly in the proportional dimensions of all 3 pyramids. So when we look at the 3 pyramids on the Giza Plateau, we are looking at the architectural form representing all musical intervals. So it's the full spectrum of sound. We're literally looking at a rainbow spectrum of light. All musical intervals are perfectly represented.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Again, I'm just always astounded that somebody could have thought of these things
Right,
so
right.
long ago. And I'm a huge proponent of, a long lost higher age and the cycle of time. It just makes all sense to me.
Yeah.
But the level of knowledge in
Mhm.
the higher ages, or even when they're building the pyramids, whenever
Mhm.
that exactly was, is we haven't even scraped the surface, I don't think, on what
Right.
they were
No,
trying to tell us.
we really have not. And that,
Right.
I think, is such a critical aspect of this story, that
Mhm.
it is so advanced, Walter. It's mind-boggling.
Mhm.
It's beyond mind-boggling. And the things that we've discovered, are seriously profound now when we look at it in this context, that in order to go into higher dimension, mankind has to realize a higher order language of higher dimensional mathematics.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like we have to figure out how to beat the killer hornets.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And so much of it is hiding, like so much mystical, esoteric treasure is, so much of it is hiding in sort of plain sight or in plain music, in a sense, the sense of musicians know, or those who, you know, have a sense of what it is to be musical or hear music. We
Mhm.
know the power of tone, and we know how pervasive it is, whether it's, as you're saying, and I love how you describe there's, the dun 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 dun, and the sort of the way that it sort of entrains, or sort of, I think that's the word you use, like kind of uh elicits certain kind of responses, but also the power of tone when in various meditation practices, tone, mantra, these are, and the tone in words that I think, again, it's hiding in plain sight in that sense of, right, of, we just think of them as words, we just think of them as songs, but the incredible sophistication within, is that something that we're meant to, I guess I wonder, if everyone could understand this, everything that you described today, what would you be on to next? What would be the next step for you? If you didn't have to wait for everybody to catch up to this, where would you be kind of going next with this?
Well, good news is I'm not waiting.
Okay. Well, I'm still catching up to all the geometry brilliance that you have there, but I know what you mean. People are kind of waking up. But
Well, so I'll show you this quick video, and no one's seen this yet, so you guys are the first to see this. I don't
Ooh.
think I've seen any video anywhere of anyone who's got this footage right here. And this is the Abu Rawash Jed Pyramid, and the crevice that's inside of it that's left over, and we climbed it. And I'll show you another photograph of it from the outside in just a moment. But I climbed this thing so that I could see exactly what the Giza Plateau looked like from there.
Okay, so that's part of the base we're looking at.
Yeah, so the whole thing exploded out, but you could see it was carved into the bedrock.
Wow.
Been up here before? So you had to come. Yeah, this is not a place you want to fall.
Oh boy.
No one goes to this place.
Yeah. What's the estimated dating there? Is that older?
They believe it's the, I think, 4th dynasty, which would have been the same time roughly as the Great Pyramid.
Okay.
Mhm.
It has the
and-
same style construction.
And you can see the Giza Plateau.
Okay,
there.
so here
Yep.
you are.
Wow, and it is so, you have this lookout. So was the pyramid, when you say it's higher, it's elevated higher,
Yes.
is it also proportionately much bigger? Like kind
No,
of,
no,
Oh,
it's
okay,
it's
okay.
more steep. So it
I
has
understand.
a 60-degree angle of slope versus the Great Pyramid's 51.85 degrees.
Right.
Okay.
So these would be the two steepest of all the existing pyramids we know of.
By far, yes.
Wow.
Definitely
Yeah.
the steepest.
Okay.
So this pyramid, you're going to see the blocks of it exploded out hundreds of meters. It's crazy.
Wow.
This is
Any-
beyond nuts. I can't believe no one's really done much research on this.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're so much higher, right?
Wow. Do you think, Robert, that the two additional pyramids that you're sort of looking at that would kind of make for the 5, do you think that that's a sort of a direction to go in terms of looking at pyramid complexes around the world, or does it kind of depend? Is that too simplistic? Or do you think that pyramid complexes could come in 5s?
I
in other
think they
places, or
no, I don't think they necessarily come in 5s. I think this
Okay.
one is unique.
uh-huh.
There are no pyramids really in the south except for on the border with Sudan.
Mm.
And those pyramids in the border with Sudan, which would be around where the root chakra is, are the same as this pyramid on the dollar bill, and the one that you're about to see as well, right in front of us. And
Mhm.
I think this is a unique situation. I'll show you the Fra Mauro map
Mhm.
that depicts 5 pyramids on the Giza, in the Giza area. And it names the Nile River as the Gihon River, which is
Mm.
actually the name of the river that extends out of the Garden of Eden.
Oh,
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it's not called the Nile River until it gets far, far south. It's called the Gihon River in this 1457 map, pre-Columbian. So have a look at this.
Billy, you'll have to do some AR here on top of Robert's
Yeah.
video so we can see the outline of what those pyramids would have looked like and the angle.
Oh, wow.
You'll see it here in a moment. Yep.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So now you can see how close the Giza pyramids are, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the corners of the pyramid are matching with the Great Pyramid's corner as well. They're linked. So you'll
Mm.
see that in just a second. So I'm going to put now look at all these blocks.
Mhm.
Okay.
These are all blocks from the pyramid. These are like 20-ton blocks.
Scattered all out there.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
How exactly did that happen? Right? That's kind of
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
It is. Yeah. So
I mean-
that's that kind of sense of exploded. Like
Yeah.
it's somehow these rocks have gone much further out from the base.
far, far out from the base.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this is the other pyramid. You could see the slope angle on this is a very steep one. It's been measured to be 67 degrees. And so that matches the one on the dollar bill. This one would have been 100 feet high.
Oh,
And
wow.
the other pyramid that I'm standing on, you'll see it in just a second. Whoops. Is so the Jed Efre pyramid Abu Rawash. Okay, here we go.
Just interject and say, it is wonderful that someone is looking at these structures and the Giza Plateau and all of Egypt, really, and structures around the world from a mathematical standpoint. And I think that's your unique contribution
Yeah.
here, not to mention the individual findings about the ratios and things like that, but just coming from the discipline of mathematics adds a whole new layer, which I think elevates our assessment of how much they knew. It just ups it.
Right. It gives your way of translating that to listeners, Robert, is really incredible. And I agree. I think it's that thing, that very human thing of if I don't know mathematics, then it's almost as if that kind of sophisticated technology, it almost doesn't exist to me because I don't understand it. But when you can break it down, I have a sense of, wow, this is incredibly sophisticated.
Well, thank you. No, I agree. I feel like that's kind of like my my niche, I suppose, to look at this from the perspective of mathematics. And that's why I've been able to build a good relationship with a lot of the Egyptologists, because they're thinking about this very differently now too. Right.
Okay,
So
yeah.
this is the small pyramid that's on the same as the one on the dollar bill. This is the base of it. It exploded as well.
And what's the width of that base then, roughly?
The width of this base,
one side,
is 50 cubits, which turns out to be, you're going to like this, 86.4 feet.
Okay.
So 86.4 feet, which of course the sun's diameter is 864,000 miles. We have 86,400 seconds in one day. We know that the pyramid builders used the foot, the meter, and the cubit in their construction.
Wow.
And so
and then how tall was this one?
This one was over 103 feet.
Okay.
And then the one behind it.
So it's almost more like an obelisk.
Yeah, almost. Yes. And the one behind it would have been 300 feet from its base, but it would have looked like, because the plateau is so much higher, 120 feet taller than the Great Pyramid. And you could see the large block construction of it.
Yeah.
This is it right here. I don't know why all the sites are terrible on this. They're just to give me like real photographs. It's like no real photograph, but you could see it right here quite well. And I took a bunch of photographs as well, and you can definitely see it. It's a real pyramid. I mean,
very, very ancient, but a real pyramid. Yeah.
And the slope angle was 60 degrees.
Yeah.
So that matches, then it completes exactly the analysis that I was showing you on GeoGebra. Right. So that means that the Philosopher's Stone pyramid, which represents the shape of the pineal gland as well, so it's pineal and pituitary glands. That's how I see these. So you've got 6/5, which is the smaller satellite pyramid in front of it. You've got 5/4, which is this one here for the Menkaure pyramid. You've got the Khafre pyramid, which is 4/3. Then you've got the Jed pyramid, which is the green one, which is a 60-degree slope. And then you've got the Great Pyramid. And if we now look at the Fra Mauro map, we can see how he looked at this. And we could see the exact section as well on Egypt, if they'll let me bring this in.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so this is the Fra Mauro map. I may have to. There we go. Okay.
Oh, there's a good shot.
Wow, what a
So
beautiful
now look at
map.
this. So you got to think of this as upside down, right? So because it's looking at it as if you're looking at Europe from upside down.
Right.
So here's
Okay.
Spain, here's Italy, here's England,
Mhm.
right?
Oh,
Now
yeah.
let's look at Egypt.
It's just amazing.
It is a beautiful map. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing map. I'm trying
Wonder
to
where
find
where is this? Some
where did
museum,
Egypt
Said
go
in-
here?
In a museum in Florence, you were saying, Robert?
Yeah,
This
it's in a
one?
museum in
Uh-huh.
Florence.
That looks like
And-
Greece. You run.
Yeah. So okay. So here is Egypto,
Egypto. Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
So
And the
All right,
name of the
there's
Nile
the
River
Nile.
is the
uh-huh.
Gihon,
Yeah.
and it doesn't become the Nile until down
Mm.
here in Nubia, Nilo.
Mhm.
Ah,
Yeah.
And look, there's 5 pyramids.
Wow.
1, 2, 3 right there.
Uh-huh.
4, 5.
Oh, got it.
Wow.
Little ones.
So that sent me looking, because then I was doing the same time the mathematics
Uh-huh.
and saying, well, wait a minute. If there's 5/4 and 4/3, and these are musical intervals. Now,
Then
I think
where
there's
is- Mhm.
a
Yeah.
deeper metaphorical meaning here too,
Mhm,
which
mhm.
is that if you've got these musical intervals are the thing that entrains emotion.
Uh-huh.
Our experience with the world is defined by our observation of the world, which then ends up becoming emotional states for
Mhm.
us.
Yes.
Our observation leads to our judgment, and our judgment of things lead to our emotions, which then becomes like our own space-time memory.
Mhm.
And so maybe if you look at the research that's been done on this, the only thing I was asked by Donald Hoffman, who is a famous, very well-known cognitive neuroscientist at UCI. And he asked me, he came to my office, spent several hours with me and another mathematician named Chetan, who works with him. And they've been published in major magazines like Scientific American and journals like Nature, et cetera. And he said, look, I read your book. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how to apply a mathematical equation to emotional states.
Mm.
So I said, oh, emotional states. That's not, thanks for the easy question.
Yeah. Let
And-
me let me just draw out a quick chart.
Well, it's almost the opposite too, because logic and feeling,
Yeah. So then I was thinking, well, I'm flying to Salzburg this week, so I'll think about it on the airplane. So I was going to Salzburg, of course, one of the music capitals of the world,
right?
the birthplace of Mozart. And I was thinking, well, how could I come up with an equation to answer his question for
Mhm.
emotion? Because Donald is probably the world's expert on cognitive mathematical mapping of human thought and consciousness. That's what he does. And so he's looking for an outside the box thought. So it hit me on the plane. I was like, well, music entrains my emotion. I can change my emotional state with music quite easily.
Right.
And that's why movies and films use it so adroitly to change, they can use a low frequency and diminished fifth to bring fear into the equation,
Right.
to make you
right.
feel afraid, right? You
Yeah.
can entrain certain emotional states very easily with music, and nobody really questions that. But you have to really go one step further and say, but what is it that creates the musical intervals that create this? And they actually did a research study at several universities on this and found that the major third makes people think of romantic love, and the minor sixth makes them think of heartbreak, and the perfect fifth makes them think of stability and feel
Mhm.
stability. And the augmented fourth makes them feel despair,
Uh-huh.
hopelessness.
Got it.
Right.
So you've got positive and negative polarities that we call major and minor chords.
Right.
And each one of them is just the inverse of the other.
Right.
So maybe there's something in here to teach us about duality and the experience of life itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something so innate to our humanity is our emotions. There's talk about can AI, can they feel? Can they be taught to feel, among other questions? And that's not really like something I would particularly, I don't think we need to discuss that per se, but there's something for me that comes up that's so innate to our humanity is our emotions. This incredible palette of feelings that we can draw upon in any given moment, and then we can transmute the way that emotions can be a doorway to expanded or shut down consciousnesses, right? And then thinking of the harmony or lack thereof between two different people in their own emotional states, right? And that thing of relationship, what it means to actually be listening to someone or be connected to someone. You're now making me think about all the music kind of involved in that, the kind of or the between each of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Music
absolutely.
is just ratios of vibration, which
Right.
are best measured with mathematics, but it affects us emotionally. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
You put the two together.
That's amazing.
I hope the doc was pleased with your answer.
Yeah, he was
Robert.
interested by it. He was like, that's fascinating.
So I was wondering what his response, how he received that.
He's like, wow, he's not a musician, so he doesn't really know music that well, but he was like, he understood enough that mathematics and music were linked.
Yeah.
Sure.
And, that relationship is just this one that I showed you here. And actually, I've mapped it all out against the research that's already been done in peer-reviewed journals.
Wow.
And it matches the pyramids. It's right here.
Oh, wow.
I'm glad that we put you on last on the first day, because you are going to go over, and that's okay.
We want time with you.
That's totally cool. Speaking of going over, we've gone over today and taken away too much of your time. But I think we need to wrap it up and just say thank you very much, Robert, for your contribution. Again, looking at ancient sites, ancient structures through mathematics just brings a whole new dimension to our understanding of ancient cultures, and that's the direction we want to go again. So
thank you so much.
One last thing I'll say is that it's very consistent with your work and many of the others that are going to be presenting and have presented in past years at your conference. It is that, and I presented on this at this Gaia Ancient Civilizations conference about a month or so ago in Colorado, that I found that this grid that I just showed you of common integers, 6/5, 5/4, 4/3, 3/2, etc., extends to every pyramid in the world.
Oh, wow.
So every pyramid, I haven't analyzed the Bosnian pyramids yet on this grid, but all the pyramids of Teotihuacan, what we know of the pyramids in China, they all match perfect integer relationships of ratio.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I think Dr. Samir, I visited the Bosnian pyramids. I think Dr. Samir would say that the ratios are kind of match what you're looking at. I'd be so curious to hear more about that sort of world map of all of them.
But save it for a future
We
time.
want more, but thank you so much for all of your time and all of your brilliance.
Thanks, Robert.